All right, folks, round two on this. Welcome to What in the History, Episode 9. We are discussing one of the darkest periods in American history. We, of course, are talking about the time that they made alcohol illegal, Episode 9, Prohibition. My name is Dan Brady. Alongside me is my wonderful co host, Mr. Johnny Smith. Johnny, how are you?
I'm doing phenomenal, Dan. How about yourself?
Oh, not too bad. We had a great stand up comedy show yesterday.
We absolutely did.
Oh, man.
It
How
was
do
one
you
of the best times I've had.
Yeah, it was good set. If anybody who went to that listens to this, thank you very much.
Thank you
We
all for
really
coming out.
appreciate it. Let's see, do a little of the logistics stuff. Oh man, how's your day going? How was your podcast, Inquisitive Minds?
It was pretty good. I interviewed Danger Dave from the Stolen Stitches, and he was a very entertaining guest. And I actually learned quite a bit. It almost felt like a part two because it was the second sideshow, 10 and 1 sideshow guest I had, and I got to build off of what I learned the first time.
Look at this, it worked. I guess that's confirmation. Oh man, let me log out of Facebook so that doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
All right. So prohibition. Other than the fact that it made the sale of alcohol illegal, what else do you know, Johnny? Other the rise of
Um,
crime.
the rise of organized crime. And I don't really know much else. I know that, what was it, the 18th Amendment?
Yes.
Oh, see, I just pulled that out of my ass. The
Boom.
18th
Bop.
Amendment, and then it got repealed in what, 33 or something like that?
Yes, something
I
like
don't
that.
know all the details, obviously.
So
I have
not
a feeling you're going to tell me a lot more about it, though.
so not only was America going through the Great Depression, but you know, we also had to deal with no alcohol. Oh
Imagine
no.
people during the quarantine with no alcohol right now.
Wow. That'd be insane. All right. Well, you want to get
I've
it?
got a real bone to pick with prohibition. But yeah, let's get this party started.
You ready to learn more, sir?
Let's rock and roll.
A prohibition law strikes a blow at the very principles upon which our government was founded. That was said by Abraham Lincoln. So, why did this start? Why did America come to the conclusion of outlawing alcohol? Well, going to explain a little bit. It kind of goes back to all the way back to 1784. One of the earliest people to speak out in public about the dangers of alcohol was a man named Benjamin Rush. He was a physician, a social reformer from Philadelphia, and one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. In
Mm.
1784, while working at a Pennsylvania hospital, he published one of the first texts to consider the medical implications of the overindulgence in distilled spirits, getting hammered drunk. So he launched an inquiry, one of the first attempts to explain a undue reliance on the effects of alcohol or alcoholism as a type of disease. He noted that this is the case I infer from persons who are inordinately devoted to the use of spirits, being irreclaimable by all the considerations with domestic obligations, friendships, reputation, properties, and sometimes even by those which religion and the love of life can suggest to them.
Hey, Mr. Constitutionalist, what the hell does that mean in today's English?
So basically, it's alcoholism. Um, no, he noticed that some people just drink too much, and it ruins domestic friendships, responsibilities, reputations, properties, uh, mar- you know, stuff like that.
Absolutely does.
So,
Unfortunately, we're a country founded on choice, freedom.
amen. In the late 1700s, several small temperance movements emerged in America, many of them inspired by Rush's text. One of the first groups was around 200 farmers in Connecticut who formed a temperance group in 1789. Similar groups were established in New York and Virginia in the early years of the 19th century. None of these groups attracted a great deal of attention, and by 1820 they had all gone. So
Hmm. Just in and
just
out, pretty much.
basically, yeah, I let my notes get away from me. Hold on one second.
Oh, okay. I was wondering what's going on because I'm looking at the comments and I'm like, it's only two. I had no
Yeah.
idea.
So
Hey, we're
over
we're imperfect people. We're working at it, guys.
so over the years, um, these temperance societies exploded. They started to gain um, a foothold in America, like kind of infect the brains of, alcoholism causes all this stuff like poverty and, crime and all these negative, horrible things.
Instead of just people making mistakes, making
Right,
choices.
right. So, in addition to the moral objections of alcohol consumption, many of these groups expanded on their original ideas of Benjamin Rush to emphasize that there were also issues associated with excessive drinking. Some of these now seem rather odd, but at the time they're generally accepted as scientific fact. And for example, the fact that alcohol is produced by yeast as a byproduct of its consumption of sugar was used to portray alcohol as a form of excrement. One of the temperance writers described alcohol as something created when fungus gorge themselves and leave their liquid excrement.
Oh, you're drinking shit, guys.
It
They,
said by
they must have knew about Coors Light.
It was also another ploy was that these temperance supporters said that the body doesn't produce alcohol and that fermentation is a product of putrefaction and death. Both are untrue, but both these facts were widely repeated by temperance activists. Uh, Finally, there was spontaneous human combustion, which was supposed to occur as a result of heavy drinking. For example, one of the supporters confidently wrote that cases of the death of drunkards by internal fires had become so numerous and so uncontrollable that I presume no person of information will now be found to call the reality of their existence into question.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Honestly, that put me over the edge. I was trying to hold off on this cigarette. We're gonna go for it now.
um, so then there's Civil War. Um,
Now
for
they were
four
big drinkers during the Civil War, right?
Oh yeah, for 4 years, the Civil War between the Union States in the North and the Confederacy in the South raged over the western part of America. When the war finally ended with the defeat of the Confederates in 1865, 3/4 of a million people were dead. Infrastructures and even cities in southern states were destroyed. It took a number of years for Reconstruction to heal the wounds of the Civil War. During the war itself, in the period which followed, there relatively little activity for temperance groups because everybody needed to be drunk. It was a terrible time. Um,
Yeah.
However, as the U.S. entered the Gilded Age in the 1870s, increasing urbanization and mechanization led to poverty and hardships for large numbers of people living in these overcrowded cities. These factors, combined with the continuing availability of cheap alcohol, led to increasing abuse of alcohol and drunkenness. Crime rates also increased for temperance campaigners. The two things were likely linked. Um, the temperance movement gained new impetus during the beginning of the Gilded Age.
I feel like the two feed off each other. Like, just because you're
Yeah,
drinking alcohol doesn't make you poor. But if you're poor, and especially in what, the 1870s, what the fuck am
yeah.
I going to do to get drunk? Blow out the candle.
I definitely think that's a future episode, the Reconstruction era, because it took a lot to get America back. Because the South was ruined. It was, it was interesting times.
They're working on rising again. Don't forget that. Just when you fucking let your guard down, the South is going to goddamn rise up again.
In 1874, what would become the most powerful temperance organization in America was officially declared at a national convention in Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland! Actually, it's probably one of my favorite places to go when doing open mics. But the Women's Christian Temperance Union, the WCTU, was born out of religious groups, and although originally formed to promote abstinence from alcohol, it expanded to cover other pressing issues of the day, including women's suffrage, women's rights, and women's education. The power and reach of the WCTU was striking for its period. Um,
I got a
this
bone
was
to
a,
pick real quick, Dan.
oh yeah, what's that?
You said they preached abstinence.
Yes.
I've always got an issue with that because preaching abstinence to a teenager with raging hormones is like telling a fat guy, just stop eating.
Johnny, feel good about yourself for a moment. Thank you, Carter.
I love you guys. All the cuddles.
Yeah. Yep. All right.
I
Anyway.
don't want any of the cuddles because some people eat me on red.
Damn. It
You
expanded.
keep your goddamn cuddles.
So in 1880, the WCTU began to publish a newspaper, The Signal. 3 years later, it became known as the Union Signal after merging with another paper. By that time, the WCTU had gone international with the founding of the World's Women's Christian Temperance Union, the WWCTU.
Oh, their champion's even bigger.
The Union Signal became the most popular women's newspaper, not just in America, but in many parts of the English-speaking world. By 1890, it was selling more copies than any other newspaper in the world. So this religious organization now has a voice.
Which there's
Uh,
nothing wrong with having some religion, but once you start preaching your shit and forcing it on other people, that's where we get dangerous.
right. Um, so one woman who became particularly influential through the WCTU was Mary Hunt, an ex-school teacher who was opposed to alcohol consumption of any kind and believed that was the best way to achieve this was to educate the children in its dangers. In 1879, she spoke out about this at the National Convention of the WCTU. By 1880, Mary Hunt was the head of the newly formed WCTU's Department of Scientific Temperance Instruction in schools and colleges. So basically, DARE, but on a much,
I was getting ready to say it sounds like an early dare program.
um, but it's more religion heavy. This campaign took time to establish, but by the end of the 19th century, virtually every state had legislation in place which made scientific temperance instruction a legal requirement in its schools. So they're reaching the kids, they're infecting everybody. What was that?
I said, so they're just, I don't remember what the fuck I said. You threw me off. I thought you had an answer instead of a question. I don't know what the hell I just said.
In order to avoid the possibility of offending the WCTU, The seven major publishers of school textbooks in the U.S. submitted their physiology books to Mary Hunt for approval. So they had
So
built
she's
this,
using religion to
yeah,
approve science books.
basically, yes.
Oh my. Okay.
Um, where required, they amended text to meet her demands. She stressed that all textbooks must make it clear that there was no unsafe use of alcohol, that drinking even the smallest amount could lead to uncontrollable urge for more.
She's never been to
Most
communion.
right. Uh, they talk about that. I think I got a little section on that. Uh, Books gaining the WCTU seal of approval were not permitted. To mention that alcohol was sometimes used for medicinal purposes and were forced to include a number of dubious scientific facts. These included noting that alcohol is a poison, which was known to stop growth in the children of drinkers, that the majority of beer drinkers were likely to die from dropsy, which is a form of paralysis, and that drinking alcohol turns blood to water.
I agree
Um,
with her that alcohol is a poison. That's just my personal stance.
Recommended experiments suitable for school included the dropping of a cast brain into a solution of alcohol and explaining when it turned gray and flaccid that this was the same effect produced when a person drank alcohol. Diseases were said to be caused by alcohol consumption, included uh, dyspepsia, jaundice, intoxication, uh, corpulence, dropsy, ulcer, rheumatism, gout, tremors, palpitation, hysteria, epilepsy, palsy, lethargy, apoplexy, melancholy, madness, delirium, tremens, and premature old age. Covered
On top of
all.
all that, I know. On top of that, I know a guy who has some pretty good shakes.
Yeah. By the beginning of the 20th century, mandatory temperance instructions was in place in almost every school in America. So every kid was exposed to the propaganda.
They got their hopes. They got their
Oh,
hopes
Carter just called you out in the
in
comments.
deep.
So alcohol is a poison. Puff cigarette.
I will say it again. Alcohol is a poison.
Oh,
No
damn.
one's ever smoked too many cigarettes and beat the shit out of their wife, though. No one's like, I can't control myself on nicotine. I'm sorry, honey. You know how I get.
um, the temperance campaigners
Stay
were
away from
so
John if he smoked a pack.
uh, temperance campaigners were so certain that their cause was right that they were willing to use any method to advance it, even if that meant
We're
lying.
willing to lie. Yeah, absolutely.
One leader of a temperance group probably said that all of the lies he told about while denouncing the evil alcohol would fill a big book. Given that many temperance groups and their members were affiliated with churches, there is also one rather inconvenient proponent of alcohol that had to be tackled: the Bible. In the Bible, it is made clear that Jesus is not averse to the occasional glass of wine, and there is even one condemnation to drink. Drink, drink no longer water, but use a little wine for thy stomach's sake. Timothy 5:23. After a great deal of deliberation, temperance campaigners decided that this passage actually referred to an ancient Hebrew custom whereby a little wine is rubbed on the skin of the abdomen. No such custom ever existed.
They're
They
just so
made this
full of shit.
up. They're just trying to explain everything. Um, but temperance supporters accepted this explanation for a rather inconvenient Bible passage. Later, the WCTU would employ their own scholars who produced a version of the Bible safely free from any positive mention of alcohol. So they were just determined to get alcohol out of the picture.
They've been doing that consistently since the beginning, though.
Yeah,
When they translated the King James version, they were full of shit. Let alone all the translations now. New International. No, you're changing shit to fit the narrative you want. And you're going to lead people astray. That's how you get religious extremists, and that's how you get people that walk away completely from the church. When there's so much bullshit, you can only take so much.
preach, Johnny.
I mean, I don't want to get on a pedestal here, a soapbox, but I stopped going to church. Just because it has a cross on the outside doesn't mean it's a house of God.
Right.
You got to look into what the fuck you're actually reading, and not only that, your leaders, what they're telling you and what they're preaching to you, what the fuck are they doing? If they're not following it, they don't believe in it. I can't go with someone who's full of shit. You got to dig your own research. It's not fucking easy, but do it. Do it or be fed bullshit.
So, agreed, Johnny. Agreed. So, given the way to which the WCTU attacked anything to do with alcohol, it's not really very surprising that they rejected the notion of drinking in moderation. As far as this powerful group was concerned, alcohol had no place in a modern society and had to be eliminated. By the early 1890s, the WCTU and other groups decided that the time had come to begin a campaign not just to discredit alcohol, but to have it banned from America completely.
See, I hate it. How can you say in a same sentence, we want to get this banned from America? Where in America? You mean freedom? You mean the whole country founded on the idea of fucking freedom? Unless you're black, unless you're a woman, unless you're a Native American, unless you're anything other than a white man. Yeah, so freedom.
So in 1893, a new group was formed, the Anti-Saloon League, the ASL. They didn't promote
the Anti-Saloon League.
They didn't promote personal temperance or abstinence. It was a single-issue, nonpartisan political pressure group dedicated to achieving the prohibition of alcohol sales in the United States. Leaders of the ASL included journalist Ernest Charrington. Were keen to that's a hell of a name. Were keen to stress that this wasn't simply another temperance group, and it was not in competition with groups like the WCTU. The purpose of the ASL was solely to convince politicians and the public of the benefits of adopting prohibition. The ASU had a high number of profile supporters, including multimillionaire John D. Rockefeller Jr. Rockefeller was a long abstainer as well as the enthusiastic supporter of prohibition, and he donated over $350,000 to the ASL.
You should know what my question is, Dan. What's that translate to in today's money?
I have no clue. I forgot.
What year was it again?
Let's say they started 1900.
Yeah, and he donated 350,000.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. Holy shit. 350,000 in 1900 is equivalent to the purchasing power of about $10,829,916.67.
Wow. So the ASL put this money to good use. It created its own publishing house, the American Issue Publishing Company. At the beginning of the 20th century, the purpose of this company was to produce pamphlets, books, and other materials.
Propaganda.
Yes, they employed over 200 people, printed 24 hours a day. Um, After 3 years, they were publishing almost 1 billion printed pages of text every 4 months. So a powerhouse. But two of the main weapons used by the ASL and the AIPC were not books. Can you guess what they used to scare Americans into wanting to get rid of alcoholism?
Racism?
Racism and bigotry. Bing, bing. Uh,
Right on the goddamn money.
the churches which supported temperance were exclusively Protestant. Hey, Ash, how are you? Um,
Hey, Dan, make sure let these people know that you didn't go over this with me beforehand.
yeah, uh, this is the first Johnny is hearing of any of this, as usual, because he does no goddamn work on this podcast.
Wow. You guys comment? Somebody take the fucking knife out of my back here. Oh, E2, Daniel?
Wow, that was actually really good. Bravo,
Yeah,
Johnny.
yeah. I know my goddamn history. I know. I'm cultured. I'm a fancy man over here,
Um,
and I'm anti Saloon John. So deal with that shit.
Many of the leaders of the ASL hated Catholics and Jews almost as much as they did alcohol. Large numbers of immigrants were arriving in the United States in the closing years of the 19th century, many of whom came from Italy and other Catholic countries. The ASL used suspicion of these new immigrants as a lever for prohibition, claiming to be anti prohibition was also anti-American.
Oh, so they used fear of immigrants coming over to fuck us over a little bit. Oh, that doesn't ever sound familiar throughout our fucking history. Like, honestly, everybody acts like this shit is new. It's been going on just in fucking cycles. Everybody's so enlightened. Oh, vote for this guy, vote for that guy. They're all fucking terrible. Thank you, Carter.
Uh, ASL leader William H. Anderson claimed that the challenge to loyal patriots of America today is to demand the absolute prohibition of the liquor traffic. The ASL and a number of other temperance groups were also supportive of anti Catholic racist organizations such as the Ku Klux Klan. Anderson claimed that the
Oh,
reassertion of the KKK in the early years of the 20th century was a welcome and inevitable response to Catholic opposition to prohibition, and said that resistance to prohibition in New York City was due to unwashed and wild eyed foreigners who have no comprehension of the spirit of America.
now let me ask you this, Dan. Right
Yeah,
now, on a live broadcast, will you denounce the KKK?
yes, I will denounce the KKK and their
That's how
alcohol
you answer
hating
that
ways.
fucking question, guys. Anybody taking notes when someone says, "Do you denounce white supremacy?" Yeah, you fucking say yeah. God,
Thank,
who do you want me to denounce? Who? Which one? Name one KKK member.
thank you. I appreciate that, Ash. Thank you. Um, we got super hearts on Periscope, whatever that means. I just
I don't know
gathered
what that means, but it's dope as fuck because we got super hearts on this broadcast.
you have a super heart as well, my friend. Did I make you blush? I got my
Yeah,
notes up.
I don't know what happened there. I was waiting for Dan to talk, and he finally let me get a word in edgewise, and I didn't know what to do with it. God damn it, I love this show. I agree. KKK are gross motherfuckers.
So to use fear to further everything, as the world teetered on the brink of World War One, distrust of Germans in Germany increased in the United States. And the ASL were very quick to capitalize on this, as many large brewing companies had German backgrounds. Pearly
Makes sense.
Baker, A leading member of the ASL referred to Germans as Huns who eat like gluttons and drink like swine. League
People
pamphlets
are so
were quick
terrible.
to. What?
Everybody's so terrible to people. Like, oh,
Um,
it doesn't matter. It's just if they're different. People are so awful, just a different group of people.
Everything in this country that is pro German is anti American. Everything that is pro German must go. This referred to all brewing companies, even though by that time few had any direct connection with Germany. When the United States entered entered the war against Germany in 1917, the claims by ASL were became even more hysterical. One ASL member launched a violent attack on the un-American, pro-German, crime-producing, food-wasting, youth-corrupting, home-wrecking, treasonable liquor traffic. Another asked, "How can any loyal citizen, be he wet or dry, help or vote for a trade that is aiding a pro-German alliance?"
Remember when they tried to use that propaganda after 9/11? If you're by weed, you're supporting Al Qaeda.
Oh yeah.
No, I'm not. I'm supporting Jeremy. He lives in his mom's basement. Or I'm supporting Rick, who lives in his mom's attic. Neither one of them are terrorists.
By exploiting fears of the wave of new immigrants which seemed to be swamping some American cities, because America was prosperous at this time. It was the place to go. Um, American cities, the anti-German feeling and engineered by the war. The ASL was successful in persuading many Americans that alcohol was un-American, unpatriotic, and that prohibition was the only logical way forward. The growing power of the ASL as a lobby group in Congress meant that politicians were unwilling to take a stand against them. Um,
It bothers me they were so against alcohol, but they were cool with like Jim Crow.
it, it was said that the ASL held the balance of power in both American and both Republican and Democratic parties. It was recognized by friends and foes alike as the most masterful and powerful singular group in the United States. So they had power behind them. Um,
They were like the movie rating people.
right. So 7 days after the end of World War One, on November 18th, 1918, the Wartime Prohibition Act was introduced. This act temporarily banned the beverages having any alcohol content of greater than 1.28%, which made it illegal to sell most, pardon me, beers and all wines and spirits.
So, what kind of drink do you get that's like 1% alcohol?
Oh, duels. I
I
don't
mean, if
know.
you drink, I don't know, how many 51% beers are you going to get drunk, or is it going to be more work than it's even worth?
Um, oh, what's up,
What's up,
Elijah?
Elijah?
We're discussing prohibition. Uh, so yeah, um, a year prior, on December 18th, 1917, the U.S. Senate had proposed the 18th Amendment to the United States Constitution. This amendment prohibited the production, transport, and sale of any intoxicating liquors in the United States. The 18th Amendment was passed by a substantial majority. Now, on January 16th, 1919, it was ratified as a part of the Constitution. Despite President Woodrow Wilson's veto, it was to come into effect 1 year later on January 17th, 1920. The
I just want to point something out real quick that, especially in these political times, there's a lot of people talking about it's our rights for whatever it is, this or that right. It's in the Constitution. I don't know if you guys have been following because you sound fucking stupid. Amendments can change things. If something is in your right, it can be amended out of your fucking right. It's honestly just a piece of paper. I know
uh,
some people are going to give me flack for that, but if you can add and take away shit, then it's not fucking concrete.
Oh man, using our podcast as a soapbox. I like it. Uh
Hey, man. Yeah. I got a lot of strong opinions, I guess.
the
I'm just
18th
I'm pro people, but I'm fuck the government for life, man.
the 18th Amendment did not define what an intoxicating liquor was, and it did not define the powers which could be used by state and federal agencies to enforce the new amendment. So, the National Prohibition Act, also known as the Volstead Act, defined an intoxicating liquor as any beverage containing more than 0.5% alcohol by volume and allowed
Say
for
that
the
number again.
0.5%
Oh, wow.
alcohol by volume and allowed for the prosecution of any person manufacturing, selling, or transporting such a beverage other than for the purpose of scientific research and in the development of fuel, dye, and other lawful industries and practices such as religious rituals.
Oh, nice scapegoat in there. Question for you, Dan. Do you
Yeah,
know why it is called the Volstead Act or referred to as the Volstead Act?
I did not look that up, but I can right now.
I'm just curious. I don't know. The name sounds like it's German, so maybe it
Yeah.
had something to do with the propaganda. Yeah. Elijah Taylor, you do have a right to free speech until they decide you don't and just kidnap you, take you somewhere. Like it's happened this year.
Oh,
There's been
it
cases of
was
people being kidnapped this year.
named for Minnesota Representative Andrew Volstead, a chairman of the House Judiciary Committee who had championed the bill and prohibition.
Okay. Just like he was really for it. So they, okay. Like Obamacare.
Basically,
Okay.
um,
That makes sense.
future President Herbert Old Herbie Hoover, a Quaker and lifelong supporter of temperance, later wrote in a letter discussing the 18th Amendment, our country has deliberately undertaken a great social and economic experiment, noble in motive and far reaching in purpose. The U.S., according to the ASL, uh, and the other temperance groups was poised to enter a utopian period, or so they thought, free from the evils of alcohol and the crime and the misery which came with it. Right? A magic wand was just waved. The
Boom.
evils
America's
of alcohol, yep, we're good. Um, Let the church bells ring and let there be great rejoicing, for an enemy has been overthrown and victory crowns the forces of righteousness. It was an invitation to a church celebrating the beginning of prohibition. Everybody thought that this was going to be a miracle, that everything was going to be fixed in our country. Everybody thought without the bad, evil medicine that grandpa drank, all the problems were going to go away. There wasn't going to be any poverty. There wasn't going to be any crime, no violence. Everybody was just going to be all peaceful.
Yeah, because that's how things work. That's how everything works.
So
Boom.
these
It's gone.
these groups, the WCTU and the ASL, they expected immediate results following the, uh, the imposition of prohibition on January 17th, 1920. Um, they thought, after all, alcohol was responsible for so much violent crime, prostitution, poverty. Removing it would definitely bring about notable improvements quickly. This is one of the reasons why prohibition was also nicknamed the noble experiment, because it had noble intentions, but it turned our country down a pretty bad path.
The more and more I learn about history, especially United States of American history, they always seem to speak and expect things to change, but they only used theories. Like it was just wild theories.
Yep, that's why the phrase was coined. The road to hell is always paved with good intentions.
Hmm. But these can't even be said they were good intentions. It was an
No.
organized group pushing their agenda, and they, to the Americans, to the American public, they were doing what the fuck they wanted. They had no one's concern in mind. They had no science behind it. These people were all full of shit.
Yeah. Yeah, I
The
agree.
worst thing someone can do is tell me like what I can and can't do. I hate that.
Agreed. So there's a popular evangelist. You'll like this name, Johnny. His name was Billy Sunday. He was one of the many
Oh, that's
Billy Sunday.
he's wearing like three piece, like Steve Harvey suits. He's coming out with his gaiters on. Ha ha! Billy Sunday's in the building, y'all. Praise Jesus.
So he had a symbolic funeral for Jim Barleycorn and explain it was like the mascot.
Jim Barleycorn.
It's basically what represented alcohol and explained
Oh,
that
okay.
the reign of tears is over. The slums will soon only be a memory. We will turn our prisons into factories and our jails into storehouses and corn cribs. Uh, some communities were so persuaded by this that they actually considered selling their prisons, which
Big
everybody
mistake. Big mistake.
which everybody thought that they no longer needed. um, One member of Congress announced that prohibition was here to stay. There is, he says, as much of a chance of repealing the 18th Amendment as there is for a hummingbird to fly to the planet Mars with a Washington monument tied to its tail.
Hmm. These people were real heavy on symbology and all, like crazy stuff that doesn't even matter most of the time.
Symbolism. The word you're looking for here is symbolism.
You are absolutely correct. Thank you for that because I knew it wasn't right when it came out, but I couldn't think of the right one.
Well, that's
Thank
from
you.
one of the greatest movies of all time, Boondock Saints.
That is a great movie. I haven't watched that in a while. I might download that later.
For shame, Johnny. For shame.
Pirate for life, brother.
Repealing the 18th. So, in the event the arrival of Prohibition did not bring the immediate and dramatic assaults that these people expected, crime figures did not fall. Uh, in most cases, they actually rose following the introduction of Prohibition.
I
And, there,
can't take the edge off anymore.
and there's a little effect on poverty across the United States. Um, in retrospect,
It's like the thought if you stopped buying $5 coffees, you'd have enough, savings to buy your liquor or all that bullshit. That's the same type of logic. If you don't spend your money on alcohol, poverty will be gone. Literally,
yeah.
everything fucking repeats itself.
Um, so there's many reasons why prohibition failed. So we'll go over a couple of them. First, the imposition of the new law did not materially affect alcohol consumption in America. Prohibition banned the manufacture, transport, and sale of alcoholic beverages, but it did not restrict the consumption of such beverages. With more
So it's
than a
like
year,
weed,
basically,
right? It's
with more
incredible.
than with more than a year to prepare for the coming of prohibition, there is nothing to prevent individuals from amassing large stores of alcohol and consuming these for as long as they lasted after the new laws came into effect. So motherfuckers prepared. Um, Even those who had not been able to stock up in anticipation of the new law were generally still able to procure alcoholic drinks that they wanted. For example, grape growers in California increased the acreage of land use for growing grapes by over 700% during
Oh
Prohibition.
wow!
The reason?
I tell you what, though, it's very simple to make your own alcohol even at home. Like
Yeah.
it's not complicated. It might not be the best, but it's alcohol. I assure you.
So the reason why they increased their land by 700% was because they produced a very popular line of bricks of dried grape juice. By adding water to these blocks, grape juice could be produced. However, these products came with a warning that after dissolving the brick water, buyers must not, in any circumstance, place the liquid in a jug away in the cupboard for 20 days because then it would most certainly turn into wine.
They didn't add any yeast? Oh, that's how they make one. Okay.
Oh, yes, Elijah, it's actually possible to make it at home. Very easy. They even
Elijah, I made
sell,
it in a jail cell. It's very simple.
you can even buy a kit for like 45 bucks to start brewing your own shit at home.
Elijah, don't buy a kit. Go out and get a little bag of sugar, get a couple honey buns, a hairnet, and some oranges. Get a couple bags of oranges, brother. Don't spend that shit on a kit. Don't waste your money.
Johnny sounds like the Gordon Ramsay of prison hooch.
Hey, man, you got to learn what you can while you're there. Nobody's going to teach you how to make prison alcohol on the outside, except for me. That's what my purpose is, I guess.
Oh,
The more you learn, kids.
so given how popular these products became during Prohibition, there is no doubt that many people curiously ignored this warning and placed their grape juice in a warm, dark place until it became wine. Technically, this did not break the new law. The product being transported, i.e., the block of dried grape juice, was not alcoholic, and if it was left unattended and then it turned into wine, that did not count as manufactured,
That
proving
is
that
so
the
clever.
right, um,
That's
provided that
incredible.
provided that the final product wasn't sold, there is no illegality in consuming wine produced in this way. So it didn't take long for brewers of beer to start a similar marketing strategy. They became they began selling wort, a
You
liquid
said
that was
wart?
a WORT. Uh,
Okay.
that was essentially beer before yeast was added to begin the fermentation process. This could be legally transported and sold, and because it did not contain alcohol, if the people buying this liquid then chose to add yeast and turn it into beer, well, that was their prerogative, right? This business couldn't control what they were doing.
That's like the stores, the corner store that sells the glass rose. It's a fucking crack pipe.
Yeah.
On the
Um,
corner
so
store here, they have glass roses and chore boy on the counter.
so portable stills became popular. Stills weren't illegal. Alcohol could also be legally purchased where this was for medicinal purposes. My glaucoma, doc, and supported by a prescription provided by a licensed physician. The government issued official alcohol prescription pads, and physicians prescribed whiskey and brandy for for a large array of ailments, including diabetes, cancer, and depression. Pharmacy began stocking liquor to meet these prescriptions. During the first year of prohibition alone, American doctors prescribed over 8 million gallons of medicinal alcohol. Oh, that's
So,
great.
so again, we're just repeating ourselves. Like the world's just repeating. I have my card because my neck is technically too straight, is what the guy told me. We took an X-ray. He said, "See that your neck's too straight. You got some real pain going on. Let me send you over this recommendation. Pay the receptionist on the way out." I did have a legitimate question. You mentioned portable stills.
Yeah,
Do you have any idea of like how large they were when they say portable? Like how easy they were to like take around from place to place? I'm very curious about that. The size.
I'm gonna guess. I didn't really find any pictures or anything, but I'm gonna guess these are like moonshine stills that guys transport out into the woods, in the middle of nowhere, stuff like that. Like they probably ranged in sizes from large to small, depending on how much you were producing.
Okay, so you could have just I'm just doing my moonshine for myself operation go.
Yep.
Okay. See, it sounds like So far, they've just done a lot of bullshit, put this law in effect to inconvenience everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't stop anybody.
No, that's why.
However, there's no prohibition. There's no prohibition. There's no Bubba Wallace today.
That is true. We are going to get into bootleggers here shortly, Johnny. Which, by the way, he almost won today, but he was wrecked with a lap to go. He was right up there, man. It was good to see. The comment section on NASCAR right now is wild. I love it. So many people are upset.
For the people that don't know out there, Dan is a hardcore NASCAR fan. Would you agree to that?
Yes, I consider myself a NASCAR nerd, actually.
Dan is a NASCAR nerd. I have never watched a single race in my life, but I'm such a good friend that I talk to Dan and he calls me and tells me all about NASCAR, and it's fucking fascinating.
Right? I've been teaching Tim pretty regularly. So, all
If
right.
you weren't so excited about NASCAR when you talked to me about it, I couldn't talk to you about it. It's the excitement that gets me.
Because I can't talk to anybody else about it. So when something like big happens, like my driver this year has 9 wins so far, and they're in the playoffs. Like, if he doesn't win the title, I will be depressed for probably a number of weeks.
Dan, I just learned live that NASCAR has playoffs.
Yes,
I
we
just learned that fact live.
we don't have time. We got a story we got to get back to. However, far more common than the use of legal loopholes to produce alcohol from private consumption or illegal methods of providing alcoholic beverages for sale. The smuggling of alcohol from Canada and elsewhere by sea provided to be a lucrative, if dangerous activity. Ships loaded with alcohol illegally moored outside of the 3 mile limit near American cities. Small, fast boats would attempt to deliver it to shore. Many people died trying to navigate the small, overladen speed boats in rough seas, and many were murdered as criminal groups eliminated competition in the most basic way. Some smugglers added water or industrial alcohol and other harmful substances to make the alcohol they
Hey,
brought in go further. So they were cutting this alcohol with poisons to like make more. So same thing you have
oh,
today with
stepping
various
on
other
dope,
drugs. Yeah,
stepping on dope, fucking stepping on the crack. Yeah, that's see, it's it's this story. I think is getting more interesting to me the more you go because it's just parallel, 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 parallel,
yeah.
parallel.
So others built a reputation. You're going to learn something fascinating right now for providing unadulterated beer and spirits. The term the real McCoy comes from Captain William McCoy, a successful smuggler who provided only high quality goods which he refused to water down or cut.
Um, I actually knew that.
Oh, nice. Well, fuck you,
Yeah, I
Johnny.
did know that one.
So a new word entered.
Hey,
Go ahead.
no, I was trying to fill time while you were drinking water and being a good co-host, but fuck it now.
So a new word entered the American lingo: bootlegger, meaning any person who made, sold, or smuggled alcoholic beverages during Prohibition. And as Johnny mentioned before, this is how NASCAR got started. Uh, Down in the South, these guys would take souped up vehicles and just outrun cops, transfer moonshine from location to location, kind of like Bo Duke and you know Dukes of Hazard. They would run moonshine. Well, a lot of NASCAR drivers they got together and they wanted to know whose car was faster, so they developed racing was already in, but it wasn't with stock cars. So they put them on these tracks, and basically NASCAR started because a lot of guys with big balls wanted to have a dick sizing contest.
I like it, you know, because it's like that's some manly shit right there.
Oh yeah,
You know, you're already running from the law. Fuck it, let's race anyways. You
because
think your car's better than mine?
a lot of bootleggers, they had a devil may care attitude. Like, I'd rather be dead than in jail. So you saw a lot of daring escapes and stuff like that. So
I
far
can
from the
understand that.
yeah. So far from reducing there's also a lot of money made in bootlegging. Um, so far from reducing the demand for alcohol, the imposition of prohibition actually increased it, providing a vast potential market for bootleggers. Um, some bootleggers, as mentioned earlier, added wood, alcohol, iodine, and even embalming fluids to their smuggled hooch. These substances are highly toxic, and it wasn't uncommon for those drinking the resulting concoction to suffer blindness, paralysis, or even death. In 1927 alone, more than 12,000 Americans died as a direct result of drinking contaminated alcohol. Many illegal stills used lead pipings, causing drinkers to suffer the slow and accumulative effects of lead poisoning. It wasn't just the bootleggers who poisoned drinkers. Big surprise, the U.S. government did it too. Alcohol was still produced legally for
Oh
industrial use.
no, they wouldn't do that.
But to ensure that it couldn't be consumed, substances were added to this alcohol. Some were harmless but unpleasant tasting, like soft soap. Others, like sulfuric acid, chloroform, carbolic acid, acetone, and brucine, similar to strychnine, was lethal. It was known that anything up to 10% of all industrial ended up being stolen and consumed during Prohibition. And some people question the morality of the government adding substances which were likely to kill those drinking it. Nonetheless, the WCTU and the ASL were keen supporters of the making industrial alcohol lethal. Around
It's a shame.
10,000 people, yeah, around 10,000 people died as a direct result of poisons added to the alcohol by the government during Prohibition. Another common affliction associated with drinking illicit alcohol was Jakefoot. It was a form of paralysis which affected the hands and feet. This was specifically linked with drinking Jamaica ginger extract, which contained over 70% ethanol. Jesus Christ. In
Those sound
1930,
just like lazy husbands. Like, ah, oh, honey, I can't do anything. My feet and my hands are the only thing paralyzed.
public health officials estimated that at least 12,000 people in the U.S. were suffering from Jakefoot. Although there is a brief dip in drinking in the first year, after 10 years of prohibition, Americans were consuming almost the same amount as they were pre-prohibition. Patterns, patterns of drinking changed. Uh, hold on, I skipped. Patterns
That's great though. That's
more young people, including women, started drinking, and binge drinking became more common. Um, in the 1870s, doctors had founded the American Association for the Study and Cure of Inebriety to try to understand the causes of alcoholism to help alcoholics kick the habit. The association closed down in 1921. Virtually all treatment centers for alcoholic were closed by 1925. So alcoholics had no help. Um, Prohibition also led to a widespread loss of employment, in addition to the loss of large numbers of jobs at distilleries, breweries, and bars. The whole infrastructure of truck drivers, shipping clerks, barrel makers, bottle makers, and others found themselves abruptly out of work. Americans were still
I didn't
able to
even
make.
think about all these people at work.
Oh yeah, man. Um,
That yeah, it didn't even cross my mind. That's a lot of people.
Americans were still able to make their own alcoholic drinks or had them prescribed by a helpful doctor. Those who were willing to risk blindness, paralysis, and death were able to enjoy smuggled beer and spirits in the uh, atmosphere of illegal drinking establishments. But it wasn't just the eradication of alcohol that temperance groups had looked forward to. They had also eagerly anticipated the virtual end of crime and eradication of poverty, both of which they claimed were directly caused by alcohol. And this too, they were disappointed. All right, we're going to end part one right there. We will be back in say 9:30, Johnny,
That sounds good.
to talk about part two. We're going to cover the end of Prohibition, organized crime. We're going to talk a little bit about next week's episode, Al Capone, speakeasy, stuff like that. Have a little history for your neck of the woods too, Johnny. Uh, so I'm
Okay, I'm
excited.
looking forward to it. I'm excited.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll be back in a little less than a half hour. So, Johnny, I'll see you then. Everybody else, thank you for commenting, and we'll be right back.